All right, so here's our problem. What we want to do is we want to factor this thing. Okay? So we've got a trinomial, right? There's 1, 2, 3 pieces here. And whenever we're factoring, the first thing we want to do is try to group out anything that we have in common with the values, with the terms. Okay? So we look at the numbers first. 25, 60, 36. There aren't any numbers in common there. Okay? Because the 25 is made up of 5 times 5. And although 60 has 5, 36 does not. We look at the y's. Well, these ones both have a y. This is a y squared and a y. There's no y here. The only thing they have in common is the x squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to group out the x squared. It's kind of the reverse distribution deal. So we pull out the x squared, and this is what we're left with without the x squared. Focus. Without the x squared, we've got 25y squared plus 60y plus 36, right? So this mathematically is the exact same thing as this. Mathematically, they're identical. When we're dealing with factoring, all we're doing is we're changing the way we look at it. Think of it as having $10, right? There's lots of ways that you could have $10. I could have a $10 bill. I could have 10 $1 bills, okay? I could have 2 $5 bills. I could have a $5 bill, a $1 bill, and the rest in quarters, right? There's lots of ways to get to $10, but they're all worth the same. So we can't change the values here. We're just changing the way we look at it. So when we factor, I like using the box method. So what you do is you take the term with the square in it, which is this, right? We're ignoring the x squared for a moment. So we put it here, and the number that's by itself, we put it here. Now, over here, we need two numbers, so when we multiply them together, we get this. So this one is going to be fairly straightforward, right? 5y times 5y, 5 times 5 is 25, y times y is y squared. Now we need two values, and when we multiply them together, we get 36, but when we add them together, we get this middle term, right? Because when we add the center, that's where that middle term goes, the 60y, okay? But it's a little bit tricky because we've got these values here that are going to mess up our column and a row. So it really comes down to playing with numbers. We just need to come up with the right combination of numbers that multiply to 36. These are all the combinations, right, that all multiply to 36. So these would be all the different numbers that we'd have to try. But I'm going to skip to it. 6 times 6 will work. We go 6 times 6 is 36. Then we go 6 times 5y is 30y. 5y times 6 is 30y. 30y plus 30y is 60y. Okay? So now, this is one factor. This is the other factor. So I'm going to rewrite the problem using those two factors. So we still got our x squared on the outside, right? But we've changed this part, right? Still have the x squared, but we've changed that part. That part is now 5y plus 6 times 5y plus 6. Well, we know that when we have two things that are identical, we can actually square them, right? If we have x times x, it's x squared. Well, now we've got 5y plus 6 times 5y plus 6, which is x squared, or which is 5y plus 6 squared. Okay, so this is our answer. Now the question is why, where did these other values here go? Well, they didn't go anywhere. We just split them up, okay? Because that is mathematically the same as that, which is mathematically the same as that. It's just that these are smaller values, and in the long run, they're going to be easier to deal with, which is why we factored in the first place. Okay? So this is just a different way of writing that number, which is a different way of writing that number.